When's the last time you've gone to the doctor and left feeling dismissed, like they didn't hear you out? Maybe you were told everything was normal, even though you knew something was off. If you're a woman in midlife, unfortunately, this experience is all too common. When we're navigating those hormonal changes and having symptoms like fatigue, insomnia, weight gain, anxiety, inflammation, hair loss, all those things, and it suddenly feels like your body is not working the way it used to. Unfortunately, when we go to the doctor, when we go looking for help, we're not always met with the answers we're looking for. And one of the biggest things I've seen both as a provider and then as a woman now in my 40s is that midlife, perimenopause, menopause, that time of life is going to expose patterns that our body was compensating for up until now, up until things started changing. And the reason is it's like we lose our resilience when we have quote unquote normal levels. Let's say, okay, prior to perimenopause, when we're in our more childbearing years, we ideally have normal levels of hormones. So we have normal levels of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Of course, I know there's women younger that have hormonal imbalance. I was one of those as well. But when those hormones are still like in higher levels, it provides this kind of a buffer. And then when we hit perimenopause and menopause, and overall, if we dumb it down, say it from high level, our hormones start dropping, right? We start losing progesterone, we lose estrogen, our testosterone can start declining as well. It's like we lose our buffer, we lose our resilience. And there can be imbalances that may have even been there before that we were compensating for, and now they're like glaring holes, right? You may have heard of if you're of course, this is my interest, so when I go on, say, a social media platform, the algorithm is feeding me, all kinds of content in this area, but I see, lots of content from creators and even individuals of I think maybe I had undiagnosed ADHD, maybe I was neurodivergent when I was younger, but now I'm hitting perimenopause and, oh my gosh, like, it's just blatant, my brain is just not functioning like it was before. That's an example, right? Where there can be these imbalances already there, and when, again, we hit that shift, when we hit that midlife transition, all of a sudden, it can feel like all of a sudden, all these things are popping up. But what I have seen is that sometimes they've been there, they just weren't as severe or intense as now they are once we've hit that menopause transition. So, my name, to introduce myself, is Lori Aikman. I've been in practice as a nurse practitioner since 2011. I practiced as a nurse in the hospital and worked as a nurse in the hospital for about 5.5 years before that. And initially, my first job, I worked in the hospital even as a nurse practitioner. I worked with patients in the ICU, and then I transitioned in order wanting to help, wanting to make a bigger difference for people. I moved into regular doctor's office setting, thinking, okay, well, if I can help people before they get to the hospital, I'll make a bigger impact. But I quickly realized that there was a major gap between what I was taught, how I was taught to help somebody, figure out what was going on with them, treat them. There was a gap between what I was taught to do and then what I was actually seeing worked in patients day to day. And I was unfortunately that provider who was telling people everything looks normal, right? Basically, I don't have an answer for why you feel the way you do, which was really led me to what I do today. because intuitively I knew I was seeing the pattern. I was seeing the women in midlife coming into my office going, I think it's my hormones. I'm losing my hair. I can't sleep. I'm anxious, right? All these things are changing and it's different than my body used to be. And intuitively, right, they knew there was more going on. There was something that had changed, but I wasn't equipped at that time to help them figure out what that was. And knowing this wasn't all in their heads, it wasn't them just being dramatic, right? This was like 50% of the population, 50% of the patients that were walking in the door. Just being a female provider, I saw the majority of my patients were female. Um, and really that intuition, that realization that there's more going on here led me looking for answers. Um, and what happened was that I found functional medicine. I mean, I literally think I found out about functional medicine like Google searching, trying to search for research on fatigue, I think it even was. And I found functional medicine and started going, what? Why has nobody taught me this? And if you don't know what functional medicine is, it's looking at a deeper level, looking at what is going on at a root cause, right? Is a term that's thrown out there a lot. What's the root cause of somebody's symptoms rather than sometimes treating with medication that just controls the symptoms and doesn't actually treat what's causing those symptoms. So then I've spent that now since 2022 practicing functionally, using functional lab analysis with my patients, doing things like Dutch testing and gut and organic acids and looking at even just blood work through a different lens. And then another pattern popped up. What we would take them through the protocols, right? We would, okay, your adrenals are suppressed. You have bacterial overgrowth in your gut, right? We would take them through the protocols, and what happened is some people would get great results, but then some women on the same protocol that another woman would not get the same results, or she would get better initially, but then her symptoms would come back. And I was going, "Okay, what's going on here? Like, what are we missing? Where's the gap again?" And everything shifted when I flipped the practice on its head and started looking at genetics first. And what that means, so looking at somebody's, like, how somebody's when I say genetics, it's how literally their DNA controls how different processes work in the body. How a woman's body processes her hormones, how she responds to stress, how she handles inflammation, how her body removes toxins, right? Looking at genetically how somebody's makeup. Because, okay, you could have one person with bacterial overgrowth in the gut and another person with bacterial overgrowth in the gut. You put them on the same protocol, but they get different results, right? Why was that happening? And I just wanna point out, it would be easy, and this does happen, it would be easy to blame it on the person. It would be easy to go, "Oh, well, this one who got better results was more compliant than this one over here." But I knew that wasn't the case. So I just wanna acknowledge that if you've experienced that before and you've been through a scenario like that and you left feeling like it must be your fault, it didn't work, I just want you to let that shame, let that guilt go. Um, because what we started to see when we looked at genetics, when we looked at how somebody was wired, everything made so much sense. We could see where the bottlenecks in somebody's system would be, right? Okay, no wonder this person's gut issues have not gone away because really the right? There was really this other metabolic process, this other genetic predisposition that made them more susceptible to gut things. And we really have to work here in order to, buffer them to optimize where that other person didn't have that, right? And so this is why two women can, for example, take, we're talking about women in midlife, why two women can take the same HRT plan, right? Little bit of estrogen, maybe your estrogen patch, little progesterone capsule, maybe throw some testosterone in there too. Uh, Two women who maybe the same age even, right? Two sisters, let's call it, and take the same regimen and they have different experiences because again, how they're wired, how they're designed, the processes in their body are going to work different. So this is why, let's say one sister can go on the same HRT regimen and do great, and the other sister go on the HRT regimen and still are struggling with whatever, sleep, mood, inflammation, weight gain, anxiety, fatigue. One size fits all doesn't work. And it's personalization that does. And so this podcast, the Her Genetic Edge podcast, is where we're going to bring together, where we're going to bridge conventional medicine, right? Traditional medicine, functional medicine, or a more holistic approach, genetics, and then the hormonal changes that happen in the midlife transition, so that you can finally understand why you feel like your body responds differently than everyone else's and what you can actually do next to start seeing results and start feeling like yourself again. So, and I'm not here just as the provider. I'm a woman who's in her 40s, also navigating perimenopause, insomnia, mold exposure. I'm navigating this right along with you personally too. And my mission through this podcast is to translate the science into practical, personalized steps that women can actually use. Because it's my conviction that you should not just survive the second half of your life. I know I don't want to, but let's make sense of what's going on together so that you can feel like yourself again. If this is landing for you, if you're thinking, wow, somebody is actually explaining what's going on in a way that makes sense, and I think this could actually be the answer to what's going on, I'd invite you to subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe wherever you're listening, if it's on Apple or Spotify, but I'd invite you to actually subscribe on Substack. Substack is where this podcast is published. And when you subscribe on Substack, you'll get notifications when new episodes are out, but you'll also get access to even more content, articles, and things like that I publish each week. So you can join me at loriaikman.substack.com. We'll also put that link below in the show notes. Thanks so much for being here, and I will see you in the next episode. This is Her Genetic Edge with Lori Aikman, a podcast helping women make sense of hormones, genetics, and the midlife transition through practical conversations around health. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to replace medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your care.